Good evening. I am Scott Sackett. If you enjoy this YouTube video, please take a second to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. First off, I want to apologize. I'm a little late with this video. If you know me, you know that unfortunately last week my father passed away. Now this wasn't surprising, but it did mean that I didn't have the opportunity to record this video. I'd hoped to record it last Monday, but we were with my mother, and so I wasn't able to. So I apologize for that. I know that, but I hope that most people understand that, and that's why I'm late with this video. I will try and be more punctual in the future. But anyway, so again, if you're new to this video, I am walking through this book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. The idea is that I'm going to go through it. I think this book is a great example or great art book. If you follow this and learn all the lessons, I think you will become a great good. If you're good, you'll be great. If you're okay, you'll be good. Let me put it that way. Comic book artist. I think this is a book that has everything you need to know in it, almost. And so what I've been trying to do is go through and supplement some of this stuff. And so I did a review of it, and I did the first lesson a couple weeks ago, and then I did a follow up on my homework. And I hope that you watch that video, and then we'll go through this one, talk about this one. So on the first video, let me get started. On the first video that I did, I went through the first, I think I went through the first 2 chapters, yeah. And I talked about some comic book storytelling terms, for example, like medium camera, long camera. And I'm not going to go through everything in the book. I hope that you'll have a copy of this to kind of follow along. And then I had you do cubes, kind of like this. And then I had you build some stuff out of cubes. And then I went through on my homework and I showed how I built something out of cubes. And I did a couple cars. And that's what it talks about here. So the next chapter is chapter 3, the power of perspective. Perspective is one of my favorite things to draw. When I was a kid, I had a cousin who was an artist, not a comic book artist, but an artist. And he showed me how perspective worked. And so I have this drawing that I did when I was in 2nd grade. I remember doing this very well. I found it in, I found a folder called Scott's Art Book that I did when I was in 2nd grade. And this was one of the drawings that was in there. I found that recently, actually, over at my parents' house. And this is the classic example on how perspective works. I remember my cousin showed me this. And this is what they call one point vanishing point perspective. And the idea is, and the traditional thing is, this is a road, and it goes into the point, into the vanishing point. And so everything goes at vanishing point. And so in 2nd grade, I learned to do this, and I did this. And so when I got older and went to art class, my teacher was amazed because I knew perspective. So we're going to go through this book, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to add some of my thing, because like I said, perspective is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And at some point, I'll do a homework, maybe before I record next week. My idea is to do a chapter a week, or do a lesson a week. But okay, so this talks about perspective, and this is your basic how perspective works. And so the idea in perspective is you have a horizon line, and then everything relates to that horizon line. And I'm gonna do a graphic example of that you can see. But I think when I was a kid, this line threw me because they called it an eye line, and it's basically the level of where you're looking at it. So if there were no buildings, if you're out, say, like where I live in western Oklahoma, I don't live in western Oklahoma, but if you were in Oklahoma, out in the west where there's no buildings, and you looked, you would see the horizon line as it went across the sky. And so all the buildings in that would relate to that. And so I'm going to show you, I got a little bit of visual aids. I'm going to show you here. Let me grab a few things off here, a few rulers. And for sake of sorry about that. For the sake of our visual aids, this is going to be our horizon line, okay? And so this is going to be our building. Let's see if that works. Yeah. So, and I'm trying to set it up so it works in the camera, and I think it'll work. Now it's a little big to fully show it. But so in this example, this is our horizon line. So you can see this line, this edge of the building. Say this is the side of a 7-Eleven. This one goes and it would follow out into space, and it would end right about there. Now, this ain't gonna be perfect because I'm showing it on a box, but this one comes along and it goes to the same. So if you drew this, these would go in and they would converge on that horizon line, and it would change and see as I move it up, that line gets flatter, and when I move it down, see like here you can see there's if you drew this, you draw it like that, you draw it at an angle, and when I move it, see how that angle changes? And when you go past and again, it's an artificial horizon. The horizon is probably more about there. But when you go past that horizon, it gets completely flattens out. That's because as it turns, this plane, that side of that 7-Eleven, those lines are parallel to each other. But because of perspective, they will extend into space. And on the horizon line, they will converge at this vanishing point. And same way over here. It goes this way, and then it kind of comes over here. I can't see that real well, so that may be off on that. But that's basically it to perspective. Now, there's a lot of nuances to it, but that basic thing is this idea that all of the planes on the same, all of the edges on the same plane converge in the same spot. And so you see, on the horizon line, so you see it, and it comes down. And as I turn, you notice they both get, I think you can see that as I turn that. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes in a book to get that point across, but that's the gist of perspective right there. Now what happens is, okay, so when like the box, as it gets lower, you notice it flattens. And so where it's at in the plane changes how it looks. So, for example, let me find a mannequin around here. For example, though, with the figure, so I got this figure. I'm moving a little closer to cameras. So when I move him down, it's a straight-on view. But when I move him up, see how he gets more of an upshot. That's because he's on this horizon line. And so you would want, like if you wanted the figure, so one of the tricks about perspective, say if this is a 7-Eleven, and we'll say that this is the horizon line, and we'll say that the door is about this big. So this would be about maybe like somebody's crotch. That'd be so. If you wanted the figure, so I got my 7-Eleven here. If you wanted the figure to look, now again, our line is right there. So if you wanted him to look like they were in the proportion, it would hit, that horizon line hits in the same area. For example, so like if you, and this is, and this book doesn't go into this, by the way. So say this is someone standing, and so you have a, okay, let me grab another. I got another action figure. Okay, so say you have Daredevil and he's in the background. Say the horizon cuts him through the waist. Well, they're on the same plane because the horizon cuts their body in the same spot. So wherever the figure is, where that horizon line cuts them, it won't matter if they're closer or farther. And so you can put figures on the same plane. In other words, they'll look like they belong in the same picture by doing what Andrew Loomis calls, I think he calls hanging them on the horizon line or something like that. And it's basically this idea that the horizon line would cut through all the figures at the same spot. Okay, so let's open the book. I think that right there is a pretty good place to start in terms of your horizon line and how that works. And so that's kind of what this showed you, just exactly what I showed you here. It's this idea that they converge, and it's just like I showed you with the box. So then here, okay, so this is a 1 point, which is which the 1 point is basically you have one and they're all going together, and it's kind of artificial But it works if you're going down a road, or if you're coming down a street and you stop right in the middle of the intersection, right there. You know, these buildings are flat, and there's the point perspective. So here's the 2-point, just like I said. Now there's another one. There's something called a 3-point perspective, and that's a comic book thing. That's a big comic book thing, and it's basically the idea that the building is so big you're looking up at it, and that there's a third vanishing point up here. So this one will go to this way, and then these will go to one somewhere down here, probably down here, and then this will be up here. If you ever see a 3-point, the horizon line is way low. You wouldn't want the horizon line up here. So I can't really show this with my box because my box is too big. But it's basically, if the box is too, hang on, maybe I can. So if this is the box, or this is the box, it would be tilted looking. Now, if I tilt it enough, you can see it kind of goes back. Like I said, I'm a little close to the camera. But anyway, that's how the 3-point perspective works. There are others, certainly. Okay, now the book tells you how to make a circle in perspective, which is a good thing. And that is I use that for my tires when I draw thing. Now, this shows you how to divide a perspective, because like if you're drawing windows, this is how you do it. Basically you draw your perspective, and then you draw a line, and then you divide it equally, and then you put a line across it, and where they meet, you put another line, a horizontal line to the vanishing point, and see how those sections get smaller as they go back. That is how you determine how wide they would be as they go back in the distance. And you can do the same thing on a surface, like if you're drawing like a chessboard, for example. And so the book has some real good examples of this. They have, of course, an example where it's using the comic, and then they have an example here, and you know, it's the same kind of thing. Again, here, you know, you can see that he's a little bit taller than them, but the horizon line goes right there, and they're about the same. They're a little small. He may be, but I think in the actual one, it's probably a little closer than there is in their little diagram. But there's some pretty good perspective there. So that's the end of that chapter. But I'm gonna show you a couple things. One is, if you want to learn about perspective, this is a really good book I recommend. Now the text is very dense in here. I will be honest with you. It's drawn in it's how to draw perspective it's a perspective for comic book artists by David Chelsea. And it answers a lot of questions about drawing comics in perspective. But what really got me down the good path, or whatever you want to call it, in this book, in the back it has perspective grids. And you can see my book is I copied these and used these, and it's just a grid that and used to, you could buy a book of these for architects. I haven't seen one in a long time. They're real expensive. I never owned one, but I took this and I blew up copies of it, and I would lightbox this forever. And it's just the grid all drawn out. Now, if you want to see some good examples of a perspective grid in use in comics, look at John Byrne's art. John Byrne uses perspective grid. I don't think I have any examples of his around here. I'll show some of mine, but I'm not John Byrne, of course. But in mine, this is a rough. I don't know if you can see this, but I use this for this building, or for the interior of this room, and I will eyeball it. Now, I'm gonna give you something that I do a lot when I'm out drawing, because a lot of people will say, I can't draw backgrounds. And so what I'll do is, and this is one of my old sketchbooks that I've had, and I love this sketchbook. I don't know where I got it. It has no brand name on it or whatever. I've got it like in the front of a used bookstore. So this is a book that I took on vacation with me, and everything I'm going to show you, I drew 100% in with a Sharpie, with no underdrawing of any kind. But what I did, so this is on a plane. I took this on vacation. So this is on a plane, and what I did is I've trained my eye to look for the horizon around me when I'm drawing stuff like this. And so you can kind of see, this is kind of a 1-point perspective. So the horizon line probably comes through there, and then these lines kind of converge right there, and so everything goes to that line, you know. Um, yeah, this was a lot of fun to draw. Actually, you know what? I think I did do a little bit of perspective with a pencil on the bottom there, a little bit of perspective grid. So here's I went to New York Comic Con. This is from 2012 at the Drink and Draw, and you can see. I mean, it's a little rough because I'm drawing with a Sharpie, but you can see the perspective. And if you do enough of this stuff, this will train your eye to see perspective. And this is a great way to learn how to draw backgrounds, I think, because you can see. This is at the Museum of Natural History, because you can see when you do this, especially in Sharpie, you can't fake it. You've got to kind of observe it and see where things are at, and you got to measure. And this is really loose. I know that this is not. Here's one of the rooms with the elephants, the Asian Hall of Animals. I did a lot of them. This is a great sketchbook. I mean, I love the sketchbook itself, maybe not the illustrations. This is the Hall of African Animals, when you can see how, it would kind of, this is a 1 point perspective, but it would kind of converge. And, something else, this is a good place to point that out. Just because, like, this might go one direction, this was at an angle, so it's not gonna be the same vanishing point, but it would be on the same horizon line, because it's not tilted, or it's not, it all relates to the same horizon line. This is a good one. This is a restaurant. Let's see. It was at the Met. Not the best drawing. Some more at the Met. Drawing with a Sharpie was great practice. There's a burger place. I would suggest, by the way, taking this is a small sketchbook. It'll fit in my bag I have. But I would take a sketchbook with me, and these were all drawn from life too. So I had to look at it at the airport, JFK. You have to look at it and figure out where the planes are. No airport pun intended, and where they're going. The airplanes. Plane home. There were a couple legs. This was a small plane we were on. But, perspective is used in all these, even stuff that you wouldn't think would be perspective related. What that is. I got some more in here. Another trip to New York. It's an Italian restaurant. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a Minneapolis building. Not as successful of an illustration. My Sharpie's starting to dry out. But you can see, I think doing this kind of thing is great practice, and it'll sharpen your eye for drawing backgrounds. And again, there's not a lot of detail in these, but drawing from life, draw while you're waiting for food. That's what I would encourage you to do, and that will help develop your ability to see perspective. There's some convention center in Minneapolis. And certainly if you draw something and you figure out how the perspective works in it. And so that's chapter 3 of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. So, homework this week. What I would like is for you to draw, use perspective, and draw a building of some kind, a structure of some kind. And I would like for you to draw, I would challenge you to draw an exterior. You can draw, it can be whatever building you want, but lay out your horizon line, lay out your vanishing points, and if you have to draw, the grid and do all that, draw that, and show that, and then do one for the exterior of a building, the outside of a building, and then show an inside, show a room, draw your living room. Do the one on the exterior with rulers, and then if you're comfortable with it, draw the one on the interior kind of freehand. In other words, don't use any rulers. Draw your horizon line though. Draw it in kind of lightly, and then figure out where your vanishing points are based on observing where those walls and the different planes of the different objects in the room go, and then figure that out. And then you can put lines to it, but then put your actual detail in your finish line work in freehand, and do that. Do an exterior of a building and an interior of a building. And if you're not comfortable, you don't like the first one, keep working on it. And I would encourage you to, and I think I've talked about this, get a sketchbook, carry a sketchbook with you. When you go out and eat, I know a lot of things are locked down, but when you go out and eat, while you're waiting for food, sketch the restaurant, sketch whatever you're waiting on. Sketch the building that you're in. You don't have to use a Sharpie. I use a Sharpie in that one sketchbook, but a lot of times I'll use a pencil. But a pen is good practice, certainly. Do that, and I think if you do that a little bit, I think you'll see your perspective improving. And if you want to get this other book, I would recommend it. I don't think it's necessary. I think practice is more what you need. And just observe the world around you and how perspective, how the perspective reflects what's going on in the world around you and in the architecture around you. Okay, I'm going to stop for now. Again, I'm Scott Sackett. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this, please take a second to subscribe. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I try and answer. I try and read all. I read all the comments. I try and answer them. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Good night.